Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy JT here, coming at you with another New World video. Guys, fresh off of the M3 Savage Divide world record this past week, I wanted to drop a gear video for you guys because I know a bunch of people have been asking in the comments to see what gear I used for Savage Divide. I want to preface this gear video with a few things. Number one, if you're thinking about beating our M3 Savage Divide record, please do so. We did run all 35 of our runs this week and made a lot of mistakes. So it's definitely a beatable record, especially with the new 725 gear score. And competition is good. So get out there and play your M3s. The other thing I want to say is shout out to Marty and Dome for helping me a whole bunch with my gear sets this week. These gear sets were not fully made by me. Marty and Dome gave me a bunch of inspiration for the gear sets that I used. Typically, I would use 5 gear sets for Savage Divide, but this week I ended up going with, I believe, just 4 gear sets. So I'm going to start this video by just hovering over the gear sets so you guys can see what I was rocking, and then I'll jump into talking about all the gear sets and kind of the explanation for each, and maybe I'll throw in some clips of like the pulls that I did with each of the gear sets. So thank you guys for being here, and enjoy checking out the gear sets real quick. Alrighty, guys, let's hop into the explanation of each of these gear sets. And like I said, I might throw some footage of me doing some pulls over this, and I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible. Of course, if you guys have any questions about my gear set, be sure to comment down below. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Of course, you can also join my Discord if you want to ask questions there. The link for that is in the description. But let's hop into the explanation for these gear sets. So the first thing I want to call out is I want to go over to the sword and shield skill tree to kind of explain something that Marty and I kind of talked about this week as being a large benefit. So the thing to consider for these gear sets is that some of them have round shields and some of them have tower shields. One thing that was on the Savage Divide mutation this week was some of the mobs had the shattering ability, which means that they were just destroying my stamina bar very quickly. We started the week with me trying round shield kind of universally outside of the final boss, and it wasn't going so well for me. My stamina was getting broken way too quickly. So I ended up swapping to, as you saw, my main one set does have a kite shield. But the reason for the swap between the two types of shields is for, the big thing is for Defender's Resolve, and then there's also something in Whirling Blade. So let's look at Defender's Resolve first. So this final countdown thing in Defender's Resolve, you can see there's a difference depending what shield type you're using on what you get. So if you're a round shield, your base damage is increased by 20%. If you're a tower shield, your base damage reduction is increased by 20%. So basically, if you have a round shield, you get more damage. If you have a tower shield, you have more defenses. So originally we thought we needed a little bit more damage, so me being on round shield made sense. But again, because of the shattering thing, I ended up switching later in the week to using the tower shield because it just felt better for me. Okay, so let's hop over to Whirling Blade now so that we can get an understanding of why I have two main gear sets. So for Whirling Blade, this passive here is talking about the type of armor that you're wearing. So whether your whole set is light, medium, or heavy. So this was kind of the second thing, and this is why I have those two gear sets. So what a lot of tanks at a high level will do is they'll light tank whole dungeons. Now, I'm still kind of like, my mechanics are not fantastic, and I'm still improving every day. So I wasn't super comfortable light tanking the whole dungeon, and there are some like really scary pulls in Savage Divide, one of them being where you pull the 4 big guys, the 3 mammoths and the Drake towards the end of the dungeon. That's like a scary pool to be in light for, so I was a bit more comfortable doing heavy for most and light for some. But the difference between the two is if you're in light armor, you inflict a rend, a 15% rend, which just means that your teammates can do more damage to the target. If you're in heavy, uh, it gives a weaken to the target, so it does less damage to you. So there was a small part of the dungeon where I was in light so that I could do more damage as well as just run faster. But this is also something to keep in mind when you're tanking and kind of looking to be more min-maxy. The one last thing I'll say before we jump into these gear sets is everyone has a different playstyle and goal. Make sure with whatever group you're playing with, you guys have like a set goal for how you want to play. Not everybody has to go for a world record, super sweaty run. Obviously, you can do that, and it's a fun way to play if you have a group that's working together and has just like the good vibes. But this is not for every group. So this is what I did. So my main one set, what I was going for was, first of all, the dungeon was nature, which is why you're going to see quite a bit of nature protection in there. I ended up having 56% nature damage resistance, as you can see over here on the left side. And then something kind of cheeky that I was doing that both Marty and I talked about, and it's something I've been thinking about, and Marty confirmed for me, is as a tank, you don't really need the like near 80% reduction to nature, especially because when I'm tanking, I don't really get hit super hard from the mutation damage, like whether it's nature, void, whatever. Most of that normally doesn't hit me super hard as a tank. I'm more worried about the physical damage, so the mobs are actually sitting there hitting on me. So I ended up having a strike shield instead of a nature shield to give me just a little bit more protection from all the strike that was happening in the dungeon. And even post playing, I'm thinking like I really could have gone with maybe a little bit less nature as well. Could have been pretty good because I wasn't really ever dying to the nature damage that was being done from the mutation. Those little we call them the Roombas, the little green circles that come out in a nature dungeon. But the big thing is this set I needed as much like kind of strike protection as possible as well as nature. So I did end up, I believe, having strike conditioning on a few pieces maybe. I think I might have done the strike conditioning pieces on my light set, might have been where those are at. So I didn't have any for this set, unfortunately, but strike conditioning would have been good to add into the set. A couple key perks I want to call out that were really helpful. So this sword from the new Hive, if you haven't done Hive, definitely recommend, has some really nice stuff. And the big thing is Trenchant Rend. So heavy melee attacks inflict rend for 7 seconds, again just making it so my teammates and I can do more damage to whoever I'm heavy attacking is super important to keep in mind as you're going throughout the dungeon of I need to be heavy attacking so we can do more damage. Another key thing, and I've talked about this with Dome a whole bunch, is Despised is like necessary for tanking. It just helps you hold aggro so much better. Was super necessary. I did have Fortifying Toast, which I really like. A lot of people will have like a mana potion in their hotbar and kind of just use the mana potion every 10 seconds to get that Fortifying Toast. And then kind of like the cheeky call out here is I do like to use Endless Thirst because it is a pretty good artifact. It's not like, I know a lot of tanks don't normally use it because putting Despised on it is kind of weird, but I know that I'm only a tank, so that's why I put Despised on my Endless Thirst. Alright, let's hop into the second gear set here. So first call out that I want to make is it is a light set. I am in light armor, and again, it is because I just wanted to do more damage, as well as there was a little part of the dungeon where we just needed me to be a little faster, and it was kind of safe. It's right leading up to the first named Drake that you fight in the dungeon is where I switched into this set. And the couple callouts is, again, I think I tried to call it out in the last set, but it's actually this set where I had some strike conditioning pieces. It might have been my helmet and pants there. So helmet and pants had strike conditioning to give me just a little bit more defense against all the strike in the dungeon. I do have Unrelenting Mercy, so I do have Fortifying Shield Rush still, as well as the Strike Shield Ward. So just, again, that little bit of extra damage. And then the interesting thing here that I want to call out to players is by running Finisher offhand. You'll see this in a lot of my builds. You'll notice the perk Finisher Harmony. Attacks against bleeding targets deal 15% more damage and reduce Flourish's cooldown by 5%. So the part that we're focusing on is that first part, the attacks against bleeding targets deal 15% more damage. So we do have a bleed rapier in our setup. So anytime that the bleed rapier applies a bleed and I'm hitting, even with this in my offhand, my sword does more damage. So really, I'm not really ever switching to Finisher. I mean, it does have a taunt on riposte, where you can riposte and then you can use the evade to cancel out a riposte real quick. Or I do have Fletche on it as well, just for some extra movement. But other than that, I'm not really ever actually using it to hit. I'm still just hitting with my sword and hoping that my bleed rapier is applying bleed so that I get that much extra damage. So yeah, that's that. I don't think there's anything super interesting else about this set. So we'll go ahead and move on to my first boss set. The interesting thing here is that for Kurok, I did run a round shield because, again, we did just want me to do that little bit of extra damage. And I think, again, that I had a couple strike conditioning pieces here. Maybe not. Yeah, it looks like I didn't have strike conditioning pieces here, but would have also been good here to have strike conditioning if I could have had the strike amulet. And then the cool thing about that I love about Savage Divide is the both boss fights you can just do like full opals in your armor because they do like the mix of all the elements for damage. And I did same strat here for this boss that I was just talking about, where Finisher offhand for that extra damage with my sword. So again, just kind of maximizing damage here, not really looking at the defenses too much. And then we'll hop into the final gear set that I have here, which is Mammoth. Now, I'm going to say it again. I swear I had some strike conditioning pieces here. Yep, they're on my boots. Strike conditioning. Looks like I had it on my heavy chest plate as well. So strike conditioning for the Mammoth. The slash conditioning is actually also good because he does slash you with his tusks. Same strategy again. Sword with the Finisher for same exact thing I've already mentioned. And something cool with Savage Divide is if you're a new player and you're, or not even a new player, if you're new to M3s and you're not really like going for world records or anything, something I recommend is the wall artifact. So for tanking, in like 90% of scenarios in PvE content for tanking, your best artifact is going to be Void Darkplate. It's just so powerful. You get your armor increased by 20%, has Enchanted Ward, Physical Aversion. It's such a good artifact. In 90% of scenarios, you're going to be running Void Darkplate. BNB is on this week, by the way. If you don't have your Void Darkplate and you want to tank, I suggest going and doing Mutated Barnacle this week. But in this case, the wall is actually pretty good. For both, it can be used both boss fights. I think it's better on the Mammoth because it's just more impactful there. You can do some more interesting stuff with Kurok since he's not as like dangerous to killing a tank as the Mammoth is. But the Mammoth, so the big thing is this Chromatic Ward. You take 25% less damage from all elemental sources. So again, because the bosses do the elemental damage, it gives you that much more protection. I do have Fortifying Shield Rush as the perk that I added onto mine. I actually didn't even realize I don't have this upgraded to 725 quite yet. But the wall's really fun. The thing you have to keep in mind with it is although you do get a bunch of extra stamina, so I ended up having 143 stamina as opposed to typically most people have 110 when they're running Hardy. I did have 143 stamina, but you can't dodge. You have to make sure that you're timing your blocks and making sure you're not getting staggered or knocked down or anything like that. Something that happened in our Mammoth fight that was really good that you'll see at the end of our Mammoth is the Mammoth actually charged me. And when the Mammoth charges, if you're the tank and you block, he'll take like half to most of your stamina bar, depending what kind of shield you have. And then if you just hold your shield, he'll like endlessly charge into you until like it's like an 8-second buffer when he finally breaks your stamina. But we got that to happen right at the end of our Mammoth fight, which was really nice. But yeah, that's kind of how things went for us, and those are my gear sets. Again, if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about my gear set or about our run. If you haven't seen our run, be sure to go and check it out. It's the previous video on my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching and requesting this video. I hope that this helps somebody out with tanking, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.